morning, you're watching A News. I'm Lou Brown. Here are the top stories. Multiple drones were shot down over Poland's airspace during a Russian attack on Ukraine. The world reacts to the Israeli strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar. And Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency reach an agreement to resume nuclear inspections. Now, Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk says Russian drones violated the country's borders overnight during a wave of strikes on western Ukraine, prompting a joint response from Polish and NATO air defences. Officials confirmed aircraft opened fire, calling it the first time Warsaw has destroyed hostile objects in its own airspace since the war began. A government spokesman said Tusk has called an emergency government meeting with ministers responsible for state security. Initially, authorities closed 4 airports, including Warsaw's Chopin. However, according to the latest news, flight operations were restored in 3 airports, but restrictions remain in the Lublin airport. They also urge residents to remain indoors as the regions of Podlaski and Mazowiecki and Lublin were declared most at risk. Poland's army described the violations as, quote, an act of aggression, while NATO command was immediately briefed. Poland's military command says searches for drone wreckage are underway and its forces remain on full readiness.
During today's attack by the Russian Federation carrying out strikes on targets located in Ukraine, our airspace was repeatedly violated by drone-type objects. An operation is underway to identify and neutralize these objects. On the orders of the operational command of the Polish Armed Forces, weaponry has been deployed, and services are actively working to locate the downed objects. We stress that the military operation is ongoing, and we urge people to remain at home.
Shifting to the Middle East, world leaders have condemned Israel's airstrike in Doha after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed he had ordered what he called a, quote, surgical precision strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar. The attack has sparked global alarm with calls for restraint and fears of regional escalation.
Smoke rising above Doha's skyline, verified video shows the aftermath of an Israeli strike on Tuesday afternoon. Israel says 15 fighter jets carried out the raid, firing 10 munitions at a single site said to house Hamas's top negotiators.
At noon today, I convened the heads of Israel's security organizations and authorized a surgical precision strike on the terrorist chiefs of Hamas. These are the same terrorist chiefs who planned, launched, and celebrated the horrific massacres of October 7th.
Hamas says its leaders survived but confirmed 6 deaths, including Humam al-Hayya, son of exiled Gaza chief Halil al-Hayya and senior aide Jihad Labad. A Qatari security officer was also killed.
The leadership of the movement survived this cowardly attempt, but a group of martyrs ascended, including brother Jihad Labad and Humam al-Hayya.
Qatar's Prime Minister denounced the strike, but vowed Doha's role as mediator will continue.
The attack was a 100% treacherous act. Mediation in Qatari diplomacy is part of its identity, and nothing will deter us from persisting in this role.
Condemnation has poured in. France's Emmanuel Macron called the strikes unacceptable, whatever the reason. Britain's Keir Starmer said they violated Qatar's sovereignty and risked further escalation. Spain, Canada and Ireland voiced similar concerns, while the UN Secretary-General urged a permanent ceasefire, not destroying it. In Washington, President Donald Trump said he was very unhappy with the strike, though he maintained eliminating Hamas remains a worthy goal. The White House later confirmed he had directed envoy Steve Witkoff to warn Qatar, though too late to stop the attack.
Well, I'm not thrilled. I'm not thrilled about it. I will say this, we want the hostages back, but we are not thrilled about the way that went down today.
A short time later, the White House sought to clarify Washington's position, stressing support for Qatar while acknowledging Israel's objectives.
Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals, and feels very badly about the location of this attack.
Qatar has hosted Hamas's political bureau since 2012 and has been central to ceasefire negotiations. Sources say the targeted officials were reviewing a US-backed truce proposal when the strike hit. That plan would see remaining hostages freed in exchange for Palestinian prisoners and talks on a permanent ceasefire. Regional diplomats say discussions on the US-backed truce proposal are still scheduled to resume later this week.
Focusing on Asia, protests in Nepal escalated on Monday following the resignation of former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli. The unrest started after the government tried to ban social media platforms nationwide. Demonstrators set fire to government buildings, vehicles and officials' homes, including those of former PM Oli. The Parliament building and the historic Singha Durbar Palace were also damaged. At least 20 people have died and more than 350 injured during 2 days of unrest. Army Chief General urged calm and dialogue while the military has taken control nationwide, deployed troops to the streets and closed all airports. President Ramchandra Pulder is preparing to form a new government. Moving to Iran, the UN nuclear watchdog has agreed to resume inspections of the country's nuclear facilities, a step seen as easing tensions with Europe. Officials caution, however, that any move to reimpose sanctions could jeopardize these measures.
Iran and the International Atomic Energy Agency have reached an agreement to restart inspections of Tehran's nuclear sites. The deal, signed in Cairo, sets out practical mechanisms that comply with Iranian law passed after US and Israeli attacks in June suspended inspections. Arakchi said the understanding reflects Iran's exceptional security circumstances.
I shall stress that in case of any hostile act against my country, and in the event of reimposition of terminated United Nations Security Council resolutions, Iran will regard these practical steps as terminated.
Arakchi said the understanding reflects Iran's exceptional security circumstances while meeting the technical requirements of the UN nuclear watchdog. IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi welcomed the development.
This is a step in the right direction. This is a door we are opening. And of course, there are many things that still need to happen. We have to implement it in good faith. Others around the world can help us, and I am sure that they will do right that.
The agreement comes as France, Britain and Germany have begun a 30-day process to restore sanctions lifted under the 2015 nuclear deal unless Iran fully resumes inspections, accounts for its near weapons-grade uranium and re-engages in talks with the United States. State media said the deal finalizes how Iran will implement its safeguards obligations, marking a rare moment of cooperation after months of tension.
Now, Germany's former Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock opened the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly on Tuesday, urging world leaders to take concrete steps to address multiple global crises. Baerbock was sworn in as President of the General Assembly on Tuesday. She described the session as a, quote, pivotal moment and highlighted the UN's crucial role as conflicts escalate, the planet faces environmental disasters, and human rights are violated. Baerbock called for less focus on procedure and more on practical action by member states.
Let us come together to bring relief to the hungry children of Gaza, to give Afghan girls their future back, to deliver peace to the people of Ukraine, to provide safety to Sudanese women and girls, to save small island states from the climate catastrophe, and to deliver on the promise of ending poverty in all its forms. This 80th session is our chance to make it, not break it. To live up to the promises of the Charter, for today, for tomorrow, and for the next 80 years, showing that we are indeed better together.
Looking to Europe as French President Emmanuel Macron appoints Defence Minister Sébastien Lecornu as the country's new Prime Minister, following the ousting of François Bayrou in a parliamentary confidence vote earlier this week. Lecornu, a close Macron ally who first backed him during the 2017 presidential race, takes office as France's fifth Prime Minister in less than 2 years. His appointment signals Macron's intent to stick with a pro-business reform agenda, despite mounting political pressure. Lecornu now faces the immediate challenge of building consensus around the 2026 budget, with Macron's minority government reliant on fragile alliances in Parliament. Staying in France, which is bracing for nationwide protests, with aviation authorities warning of disruptions as demonstrations against the government escalate into a general strike.
The French Civil Aviation Directorate says flight cancellations and delays will hit Marseille, Nice, Bastia, Figari and Calvi airports from Wednesday evening. The warning coincides with calls spreading online for a total indefinite boycott starting on September the 10th. The action is aimed squarely at Prime Minister François Bayrou and President Emmanuel Macron.
Yes, I decided to participate because this was the last straw in our outrage, and enough is enough. We have to share this with public service, with social justice, with climate and biodiversity, with people who are starving. And so I think this is the moment, and I feel like something different is happening. There's a great alliance that's starting to form.
A wide range of groups are mobilizing, from climate activists to anti-globalization movements. While organisers insist demonstrations will be peaceful, many warn the protests could block businesses and transport until the political system responds.
No, it's exaggeration to say we'll break everything. We won't break everything, but we will block them so that the political system reacts. Some have 10 pay slips, but the little workers earn €1,500 a month. And the bosses, everyone is rotten in any case. We live in a society of cheaters.
Analysts warn the scale of the mobilisation will depend on whether demonstrations remain peaceful. They say anger has reached across social classes, fueling comparisons with the Yellow Vest movement of 2019.
We don't know yet what's going to happen, but many people have made comparisons to the Yellow Vest movement that happened in 2019. And that also had a very similar flavor. It was grassroots, there wasn't a leader, it started on the right, it spread to the left. And so some people have tried to, certainly in this movement, have tried to capture the energy from the Gilets jaunes, from the Yellow Vest movement, to basically propel this one.
Unions, activists and citizens are now preparing to march on September the 10th, a day authorities warn could bring widespread disruption across France's transport network and test the government's ability to contain unrest.
Now, China, Russia and Mongolia have held their first ever joint border defence drill aimed at tackling cross-border threats and boosting security cooperation. The move marks a new step in trilateral military ties. Our correspondent has the latest.
China, Russia and Mongolia have just conducted their first ever Border Defense Cooperation 2025 joint exercise in a tri-border region, marking a significant step in a trilateral military collaboration. The exercise, held under the theme of joint prevention and combat in terrorist and sabotage activities in border areas, focus on enhancing coordination, rapid response capabilities, and operational coordination among the three nations' border troops. After the formal exercises, the three parties also engaged in discussions on specific topics regarding border control as per the release. Officials emphasized that the drill was organized in response to growing concern over transnational threats and cross-border security challenges, aiming to strengthen mutual trust and cooperation. The exercise is being viewed as a milestone in regional security cooperation, reflecting the three countries' shared interest in maintaining stability along their shared frontiers. That being said, this isn't the first time when China has engaged in joint drills with Russia and Mongolia. Just recently, China and Russia held joint navy drills near the Russian port of Vladivostok. Earlier, the Chinese and Mongolian border defense troops conducted Border Defense Cooperation 2025 joint exercise in Kazakh Autonomous Prefecture in northwest China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Based on the recent history of military cooperation between these sides, it looks like China is increasingly interested in fostering closer military ties with Russia and Mongolia, both on bilateral and multilateral basis. Manu Maktoum, A News, Beijing.
Now, Turkey's Defense Minister Yasha Güler met with Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif in Islamabad on Tuesday, the National Defense Ministry announced. Güler and his delegation held discussions with Sharif and other officials. Güler also conveyed greetings from Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to the Pakistani leader. Earlier, the Turkish minister held meetings with Pakistan's Defense Minister and Commerce Minister. International aid is flowing into Afghanistan after the recent deadly earthquake in the east. Governments and organizations worldwide are sending food, medicine and supplies. Our Tamim Bahis has more on that in Kabul.
China has pledged an additional 50 million yuan, about $7 million in emergency aid on top of earlier shipments to alleviate the challenging humanitarian conditions in Afghanistan, as the country continues to grapple with the aftermath of the devastating earthquakes. Tajikistan has sent over 3,000 tons of food, clothing and construction materials. The European Union has allocated 14 million euros to expand resilient programs run by the UN and partner agencies. UNICEF says children have been hit hardest, more than 19,000 affected, 731 killed, and dozens left without families. Russia has delivered a second shipment of 20 tons of tents and blankets, while the WHO sent 35 metric tons of medical supplies. Qatar has set up a temporary hospital and shelters in quake zone, and Switzerland has provided 20 tons of non-food aid, including tents and winter clothing. With aid arriving from across the globe, Afghan officials say the focus now is on reaching survivors quickly and helping families rebuild their lives. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for A News.
Moving to international affairs, officials at the Absheron Logistics Center celebrated the 5th anniversary of the China-Europe Railway Express via the Middle Corridor and welcomed the latest freight train from China's Yiwu. The cargo of that train will be transported from Baku to markets in Turkey and Europe. The volumes of goods coming through the Middle Corridor has increased 5-fold since 2019. In the last year alone, 358 block trains were sent from China to Europe. Now, work on the Azerbaijani section of the Zangezur corridor is expected to be completed next year, according to the head of Transport Policy Department at Azerbaijan's Ministry of Digital Development and Transport, Fariz Aliyev. He said the corridor holds strategic importance for Azerbaijan's transport system and will enhance transit cargo flows both along the east-west and north-south routes. Its development is expected to enable the transport of an additional 15 million tons of cargo along the Middle Corridor. Looking in Georgia, tensions flared outside the campaign headquarters of Tbilisi Mayor Kaka Kalatsie, sparking fresh political controversy and prompting a formal inquiry. For more on the clashes between opposition activists and members of the ruling Georgian Dream Party, we turn to our correspondent in the capital.
The Georgian Ministry of Internal Affairs launched an investigation under Article 126 of the Criminal Code, which refers to group violence, following a confrontation outside Kaka Kalatse's campaign headquarters. That clash unfolded here on Melikishvili Avenue just yesterday, drawing police to the scene to de-escalate tensions. Authorities say that further violations of public order will be met with a legal response. Witnesses and opposition activists claim that they were physically assaulted by members of the Georgian Dream Party's youth wing. Protesters say that bottles and other objects were thrown from the headquarters, leaving several people injured. Among them were journalists, some of whom were prevented from working, abused, and had their equipment confiscated. Several of the injured people were taken to hospital. Government officials, however, described the incident differently. Tbilisi Mayor Gaha Kaldze described the clashes as a deliberate provocation, accusing opposition activists of trying to artificially create tension during the election campaign. Kaldze also urged international organizations, including the EU delegation, to condemn what he called repeated attacks against Georgian Dream offices. Speaker of Parliament Shalva Papoashvili went further, criticizing what he described as foreign interference. In a statement, he accused the German ambassador of failing to condemn extremist actions, calling it gross interference in Georgia's electoral process. The confrontation on Melikishvili Avenue is not the first of its kind. Similar clashes have previously broken out outside Georgian Dream's central office during preparations for the upcoming local elections. With investigations ongoing and both sides trading accusations, the incident highlights deep political tensions ahead of the vote. For now, authorities say that they will not allow what they call artificial escalation, but the debate over who is responsible is far from over. This is Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
Staying in Georgia, the National Central Election Commission has announced that local elections will be held on October 4th, with 12 political parties taking part. 2 parties were struck off the list after failing to nominate candidates for mayors or deputies. A little over 3,000 polling stations were opened nationwide, with voting held in 64 cities and districts. International observers from Azerbaijan, Hungary, Slovakia, Armenia and Fiji will monitor the process alongside 16 registered organizations. Now, leaders and experts from across Asia met in Baku for the 13th CICA Think Tank Forum to discuss ways of boosting security, energy and regional connectivity. The 2-day event opened with a message from Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev, underlining his country's commitment to cooperation, followed by sessions focusing on the Middle Corridor and the Belt and Road Initiative.
We'll present and formally adopt the agenda.
Baku hosts the 13th Conference on Interaction and Confidence-Building Measures in Asia, CICA, Think Tank Forum, with 90 policymakers, experts, researchers and delegates from over 10 countries gathering to discuss researched proposals and recommendations to explore key issues across Asia. The 2-day forum, co-organized by Azerbaijan's AIR Center and the Shanghai Institutes for International Studies, focuses on the theme, the resonance of development and security. The event opened with a video presentation and a special message from President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, delivered to participants by the head of the AIR Center, Farid Shafiev, highlighting Azerbaijan's commitment to building trust and advancing cooperation across Asia. Throughout the day, speakers led sessions on security governance, supply chain cooperation in the era of green and digital transition, energy and major connectivity projects, with particular attention to the Middle Corridor, the Belt and Road Initiative, and the International North-South Transport Corridor. Some speakers even joined online to share their proposals and recommendations.
Upcoming Seeker Summit in 2026, and I wish for all the participants.
Speakers emphasized Azerbaijan's strategic role in these projects and its potential to drive stronger regional integration throughout the panels.
This is indeed a very important event, not only for Azerbaijan, but also for whole countries, participating countries, as this event will deepen the bilateral cooperation in different sectors, especially connectivity, energy, and at this session we discussed very important issues such as the Middle Corridor, which is important for Azerbaijan, also for Central Asian countries, for China to develop this route.
Building on this, Chinese experts highlighted how such initiatives could reshape connectivity across the continent.
So personally, I see here a huge potential in the synergy between the two projects, because the Middle Corridor, which promoted by Azerbaijan and other regional countries, would be maybe by distance the shortest the transportation road between China and Europe. So that means that could play as the bridge to connecting two major markets. And then I think these projects will also generate and stimulate the regional interactions and economic integration.
You said that it's ready to activate.
The day wrapped up with an open discussion where participants engaged directly with panel speakers and exchanged views on how to move proposals forward.
Shifting to Central Asia, the Space Days Kazakhstan 2025 forum is underway in Almaty, bringing together leading experts, global space agencies and companies to discuss new technologies in space exploration. Our Fariza Kalimazina reports.
According to international analysts, over the next decade, the annual demand for satellite launches may exceed 3,700. However, the existing number of launch vehicles is still insufficient to meet this demand. This and other issues, along with possible solutions, we discussed at the Space Days Kazakhstan Forum here in Almaty. Kazakh experts emphasize that the main task for the country in space exploration and technology development is to attract foreign investment into an industry that still largely depends on Russia's space industry. A central part of this effort is the revival of the Baikonur Cosmodrome, much of which is still leased to Russia. A key project is the modernization of Launchpad number 5 under the Baytarek program, and Kazakhstan plans to invest about $1.3 billion in its upgrade. According to the government's vision, these investments should help diversify the sector, which remains heavily dependent on Russia's space program and has faced difficulties in recent years due to the geopolitical situation.
Байтерек жобасын айтатын болсақ, Ресей тарапы осы жобаға
A new launch vehicle will appear at the end of this year. This is the Soyuz 5 rocket, which will be launched from the Baytarek ground complex. We see this project as giving Baikonur a second wind. Of course, it is too early to talk about a sharp increase in the number of launches, but we can confidently say that Baikonur will remain an active cosmodrome. The Baytarek complex is a modernized Zenit launch pad adapted for Soyuz 5. Its key feature compared to existing launch sites is a fully automated launch. Another factor that makes this project promising is the use of a new, advanced and powerful launch vehicle for which there is strong and stable global demand.
жаңа инновациялық жұмыс орындарды ашу.
The forum also highlighted the growing influence of Chinese and Indian space projects that are actively promoting their capabilities. Last year, China pledged more than $13 million for joint Kazakh-Chinese initiatives in space exploration. Against the backdrop of sanctions pressure on Russia, Chinese companies working in commercial space launches are expected to become the first foreign operators to use Baikonur facilities under Kazakh jurisdiction. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalimurzina, A News.
That's the news update from us in Baku this morning. Stay tuned to A's News for more.